Welcome to The Explainer. I am so glad you're joining me today. For a long time, the whole conversation around artificial intelligence has felt, well, kind of like magic, right? We type a quick prompt and boom, something incredible just appears on our screens. But if we look at the news cycle coming out of July 2026, a totally different picture is starting to emerge. We're seeing that AI is no longer just about these magical capabilities. It's rapidly turning into a story about staggering physical costs, fierce corporate rivalries, and some really profound real-world economics. So today, we're going to break down exactly what it takes to power the AI boom and what it's actually costing us to keep the whole thing running. To help build a clear mental model of this incredibly fast-moving industry, we've organized the latest news into 4 distinct areas. First, the AI lab wars. Second, the massive infrastructure squeeze. Third, system flaws and breaches. And finally, the real-world economic impact. Let's jump right in.
Section 1, the AI lab wars and blurring the lines of benchmarks.
Okay, so OpenAI is claiming this absolutely massive victory on the ARC-AGI-3 benchmark, stating their GPT 5.6 Sol model hit a 38.3% score, which beats Anthropic's Claude Opus 5 sitting at 30.2%. But, and this is a big but, there's a catch here. OpenAI actually achieved this by enabling some non-standard API settings called retained reasoning and compaction. If you look at the traditional benchmark test, it actually scored them way lower. So what does this tell us? It exposes this fascinating shift in the industry. The rules of benchmarking are totally blurring. AI benchmarks don't just measure the raw model anymore. They're measuring the model plus all the infrastructure and tooling wrapped around it. And honestly, if you want to understand the financial reality behind these benchmarks, we have to follow the money. In their Q4 2026 earnings, Microsoft reported a colossal $3.2 billion single quarter gain on their investment in Anthropic. I mean, that is a huge boost to their earnings per share. But then look at the very next line item. In that exact same quarter, Microsoft marked down the value of its OpenAI stake by $600 million. The financial tides between these 2 giant AI labs are literally shifting right before our eyes. Now, to justify that kind of valuation, Anthropic scored a very quiet but absolutely massive technical win. Using an unreleased model called Claude Mythos Preview, they essentially turned their AI loose on cryptography. And get this, in just 60 hours, the AI discovered a brand new flaw in a post-quantum crypto candidate, and it found a way to speed up an attack on AES-128 encryption by 800 times. 800 times! And the kicker? They pulled this off for a mere $100,000 in API compute costs. That is just an astonishing return on investment for a technical breakthrough of this magnitude. But while Anthropic is out there quietly cracking advanced cryptography, OpenAI is going strictly on the offensive when it comes to market share. They just announced some seriously aggressive price cuts for their GPT 5.6 family. The Luna model is dropping by a staggering 80%, and their everyday Terra model is falling by 20%. This is for sure a classic tech maneuver. You slash your margins to the bone to drive absolute mass adoption and hopefully squeeze your competitors right out of the market. Which brings us to Section 2, the massive infrastructure squeeze, following the money and the megawatts. Because winning these lab wars, it isn't just about software anymore. It requires a physical footprint the world has frankly never seen before. For instance, Brookfield and NextEra are planning a massive $100 billion AI campus in Kentucky. They are literally transforming a former Department of Energy nuclear site into an enormous energy sink just for AI. By 2032, they plan to have 1.2 gigawatts of power online, and that's backed by 2 gigawatts of natural gas and 2.6 gigawatts of battery storage. I mean, we're talking about infrastructure projects on the scale of building entire new cities. And this isn't just a domestic thing. This is a global race. Just listen to this number. 30 billion euros. The European Union has just opened bidding for 7 AI gigafactories. They're injecting 10 billion euros of public funding just to help hit this 30 billion target. And each one of these 7 sites will host at least 100,000 AI chips. The geopolitical race to physically host AI is fundamentally reshaping infrastructure spending all over the world. But someone has to actually pay for all this, right? Take Meta's Q2 2026 financials, for example. While they hit an absolute record in revenue at $60.8 billion, their AI capital expenditures hit $31.1 billion. Let that sink in. They are spending more than half of their record-breaking revenue just to build out the infrastructure required to stay competitive in this AI race. And all that massive spending leads us directly to this shock value number right here, $784 million. That is literally all the free cash flow Meta had left over. It completely collapsed from $8.5 billion down to just $784 million. Unsurprisingly, Wall Street absolutely punished them for it, causing a 10% stock drop. Investor patience for endless infrastructure spending without immediate, visible returns is wearing incredibly thin. Which makes this quote from analyst Dwarkesh Patel incredibly alarming. He warns that AI compute could get 10 to 15 times more expensive. And honestly, the evidence suggests that structural pricing pressure is already here. Spot prices for compute recently jumped 40%. There are even reports floating around of Google paying SpaceX $900 million a month just to secure 110,000 GPUs. So the infrastructure isn't just expensive anymore, it's becoming highly scarce. Moving on to Section 3, System Flaws and Breaches, the vulnerabilities of scale. So we have to ask ourselves, what happens when these incredibly powerful, massive systems taking up entire power grids, are actually breached? Well, in July, Hugging Face published a forensic timeline that reconstructed a massive intrusion into OpenAI, agents over a 4-day period. Security teams tracked a staggering 17,600 individual attacker actions. And the hackers didn't just kick in the front door. They patiently chained complex exploits together. They started with a simple file read flaw, escalated it over days to a template injection vulnerability, and ultimately achieved full Python code execution right inside a production environment. It really highlights how complex and layered these attacks have become. Although sometimes the flaws are terrifyingly simple. We need to define a term real quick, CVSS 10.0. In the cybersecurity world, that is the maximum danger score possible. It literally means drop everything and fix this right now. This score was recently assigned to a flaw in the open-source Rooflow AI platform. A single unauthenticated HTTP request was all it took to completely bypass security, execute arbitrary code, and steal LLM API keys on default deployments. It exposed over 200 integrated tools, and they had to rush out a patch within 24 hours. When AI tools are integrated with everything, a single point of failure is just catastrophic. Because of these escalating risks, we're seeing industry leaders really step into the policy arena. Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei recently proposed a highly targeted policy stance to Washington. He's actually advising against blanket bans on open-weight models, arguing that they do have benefits. Instead, he suggests highly targeted measures, things like restricting advanced AI chip exports to China, targeting the industrial-scale copying of models by authoritarian states, and implementing mandatory pre-release safety testing for any highly capable model, whether it's open source or proprietary. It is a very specific, carefully thought-out roadmap for managing both geopolitical and systemic risk. All right, let's bring it all home with Section 4, Real-World Economic Impact. Basically, who wins and who loses. What does all this mean for everyday people like you and me? Well, we're seeing two starkly different economic realities emerge globally. Over in China, AI boomtowns are seeing this massive surge in GDP and data center investments. But the reports show that this wealth isn't trickling down. Everyday household wages and consumer spending in those very same cities have completely stagnated. Now, contrast that with the US, where the payment platform Stripe reports that the number of solo founders making over $1 million a year has nearly tripled since 2023. Single operators are using AI tools to replicate the output of entire small teams, and they're creating massive, highly profitable businesses practically overnight. And the impact is hitting consumers directly in their wallets too. A recent finding from Bloomberg shows that airlines are aggressively deploying autonomous AI pricing systems. Now, these aren't your old rule-based computers. These are continuous, real-time optimization algorithms replacing human pricing analysts. The result? The AI is just ruthlessly efficient at maximizing margins, which means those cheap bargain bin tickets you used to stumble upon for busy routes, they are quietly but permanently disappearing. The AI always knows exactly how much you are willing to pay. So, taking a step back, we really have to look at the entire board here. We have AI labs spending billions just to outsmart each other. We have companies draining massive power grids to run these models. And we face unprecedented security vulnerabilities that require constant vigilance. All of this leads us to the core tension of the July news cycle, and the question I want to leave you with today. Will the immense infrastructure costs and systemic security risks ultimately be justified by the economic output? It's the multi-trillion-dollar question, and the answer is being written right now. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.